The UN chief makes a plea for action on climate change as he declares the era of global warming has been replaced by global boiling. More victims of wildfires sweeping across Europe and beyond, with Greece, Italy and Algeria among the worst hit regions.
Niger's presidential guard detained democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum in an apparent coup d'etat, triggering a standoff with the army.
After July broke records for the hottest ever month recorded, the United Nations Secretary-General has made an impassioned plea for urgent radical action to tackle global warming. In a declaration from New York, Antonio Guterres described the current conditions as terrifying and just the beginning.
The era of global warming has ended, the era of global boiling has arrived. The air is unbreathable, the heat is unbearable, and the level of fossil fuel profits and climate inaction is unacceptable.
Guterres will host a Climate Ambition Summit in New York in September, in which he'll call on developed countries to become carbon neutral by 2040 or sooner, and emerging economies by 2050.
July 2023 is set to be a record breaker as the hottest month on record, possibly the warmest in human history. A few of the highs that have been set this month: we had 52.9 degrees Celsius in China, 48.2 degrees Celsius in Sardinia, 39.6 degrees at night in Algeria, and sea temperatures of 37.2 degrees in Florida. Now, we have been building up to this for some time. If we have a look at this graphic, then the black line shows daily global surface temperatures this year since January, and it's above average all year, building up to the peak that you see there in July. Now, this new all-time record is actually the culmination of the heat waves we've seen on land and also in the oceans. Here's Samantha Burgess from the Copernicus Climate Change Service.
So all of this additional warm air and warm surface water is kind of feeding back on each other. So we're seeing record temperatures warmer than we've ever seen before.
You may have heard that 2023 will be warmer because the El Niño phenomenon is back in the Pacific, part of a natural cycle on our planet. But scientists say it's actually too early for that.
It's not El Niño yet. So the expectation is that with the El Niño developing right now, we will get warmer temperatures to come. And the expectation is that the temperatures for 2024 may be even warmer still.
Indeed, the seasonal forecast for the rest of the year does show continued above average temperatures over land. So what can we do? Well, world leaders will have to act quickly at the G20 and COP28 summits in order to slash emissions of CO2 and methane into the atmosphere as soon as possible. Doing so will slow down the rate of warming, but there's no instant remedy. The heat and the weather extremes that we have been experiencing are with us for decades to come.
The wave of wildfires sweeping across Greece has claimed 2 more lives. The victims died as a result of a blaze in a mountainous area near Volos in the central region of Thessaly. The fire broke out on Wednesday, adding to the devastating blazes that have scorched thousands of hectares on the islands of Rhodes, Corfu and Evia. The Italian island of Sicily also continues to burn. Hundreds of hectares of forest, numerous houses and parts of the electricity and water network have already been destroyed. Estimates of the cost so far amount to over 60 million euros, and that's on top of an estimated 200 million euros the heatwave has cost the agricultural sector. Beyond Europe, wildfires are also hitting northern Africa. The death toll in Algeria has risen to 40, with several more people critically injured over the past 4 days. Among the victims are dozens of military personnel. Humanitarian aid is being sent to places affected, including Béja, one of the cities hardest hit by the fires.
Supporters of Niger's President Mohamed Bazoum took to the streets of the capital Niamey on Wednesday, shouting "No coup d'etat" after members of the presidential guard detained the democratically elected leader, triggering a standoff with the army. Hours after the apparent coup, protesters tried to approach the presidential palace where Bazoum was being held, but dispersed when guards fired warning shots at the crowd. The African Union, France, the European Union and the US have all condemned the action and called for the release of the president and his family. Soldiers from Niger, claiming to represent defense and security forces, announced on national television they had overthrown the government, dissolved the constitution and closed the borders. Neighboring Benin's president is reportedly en route to mediate as a representative of the West African Economic Bloc, ECOWAS.
Même quand ce qui n'est pas acceptable se fait, il faut que, dans la paix, on puisse corriger cela. C'est notre première option. Nous pensons que ce sera avec succès.
President Bazoum is one of a dwindling group of pro-Western leaders in the Sahel region. He was elected 2 years ago in the nation's first peaceful democratic transfer of power since its independence from France in 1960. Bazoum has taken the helm of a country burdened by poverty and a history of chronic turmoil. Threats to his leadership could undermine the West's efforts to stabilize the region.
As tributes flow for Sinead O'Connor, the gifted Irish singer-songwriter who died at the age of 56. Police say her body was discovered in her London home yesterday and they are not treating her death as suspicious. O'Connor became a superstar in her mid-20s when her cover of Prince's ballad Nothing Compares to You topped the charts from Europe to Australia.
As the Women's World Cup enters its second week, gender issues in sports persist. Despite progress in recognition and visibility of female athletes, wage inequality remains a major challenge.
On est dans des inégalités salariales qui sont énormes. Le salaire moyen d'une joueuse de WNBA était 110 fois moins élevé qu'un collègue masculin de NBA. Voilà, on a un petit aperçu des inégalités.
From the players that we surveyed, which were 362 players across 6 continents across the world, who played in the World Cup qualification pathways for the World Cup 2023, there were huge disparities within the wages that players received to compete for their national team. 29% of players were not paid at all for this competition. And that meant that 66% of players had to take unpaid leave or vacation from another form of occupation in order to compete in the World Cup qualifiers.
Inequalities in the world of sports are not limited to income. Training conditions for female players also require improvements. Female athletes say they've received hand-me-downs from the men's team.
Nous, les femmes, on récolte souvent les miettes qui restent chez les garçons. Tous les équipements qui restent chez les garçons et qui sont par exemple trop grands ou trop petits chez les garçons, c'est ce que nous, on va récupérer. Donc typiquement, moi j'ai des copines qui jouaient au FC Nantes il y a pas si longtemps que ça et qui récupéraient les chaussettes en taille 43 qui restaient chez les garçons.
Discrimination also manifests through disparities in media coverage given to women's sports.
On est quand même face à des inégalités énorme entre la diffusion du sport au féminin et du sport au masculin, alors qu'on voit qu'il y a des études qui montrent qu'il y a un intérêt des téléspectateurs et des téléspectatrices et que quand les chaînes finalement diffusent et prennent ce risque financier et aussi en termes d'audience, elles ont des résultats.
And public discrimination starts in the private sphere with prejudice, intimidation and sexism.
J'ai été témoin de la misogynie ambiante qui règne dans ce milieu. On gagne que 3-0 à la mi-temps. Celui qui nous entraîne est extrêmement mécontent de ce score et finit par nous menacer clairement de viol en fait. Et il nous regarde comme ça une à une en nous désignant du doigt et il nous dit vous voulez faire les salopes avec moi, je vais toutes vous baiser une par une.